Hello, this is Elson Azevedo, and today we have a new video of our series, Where Are They? In this series of video, we talk with people that have a connection with our department, the Department of Psychiatry of Universidade Federal de São Paulo, people that contributed to the department. So today I have the honor to talk to Professor Kathleen Pike. Professor, let me put you here on the screen. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Kathy. So Professor Kathleen Pike, she studied at Johns Hopkins University, and then she made her doctorate studies in psychology in Yale University and her postdoc in Columbia, where she later became a professor. And now she is the head of the Columbia WHO Center for Global Mental Health, which is an amazing institution that I had the privilege to join for a little while as a global mental health scholar. It was an amazing opportunity. And Professor Kathleen Pike, she is involved in several initiatives for capacity building to improve mental health, global mental health. She has several projects in Africa, in Brazil, our collaboration. She was really a central part of the ICD-11 revision process for mental and behavioral disorders. And she's a leader in mental health worldwide. She's great in getting people motivated to do work on mental health. And I have a lot to thank Professor Kathleen Pike for the support and for her brilliant career. Professor, thank you so much. Please, the idea of this video is to talk with our talk is going to be seen by our young researchers at the department, researchers, clinicians, medical students, psychology students. So the idea is to inspire them, to expose them to different careers, successful careers, and so they can have a hope to follow the same path. And we have the privilege to talking to you, a world leader in mental health. And well, the first question is how it all began for you. What was the beginning of your trajectory?
Thanks, Elson. Well, first of all, it's really a pleasure to join you and to talk with you. And so thank you very much. And I have the highest regard for your department and your leadership and the great number of individuals who from within your own organization are doing tremendous work. So it's been a privilege to be affiliated with you. What I can say definitively is that it's much easier to tell a life story in reverse, right? So I can tell you how I got here because I'm here, but 25 years ago, 30 years ago, as I was launching my career, I wouldn't necessarily have known that this was the destination or this would be the moment on the journey that I would be here. But it is, I think my career started as an undergraduate. My academic career started studying international studies. So I was always very interested in culture and the global questions around how people get along or don't get along, and sociocultural factors related to history and to our current day. And I, in the course of studying international studies, came to realize that I was really interested in the psychology of all of that. Mm-hmm. So I pursued my doctoral degree in psychology, having completed my master's degree in international studies. And so for many years, I pursued my interest in psychology and became trained as a clinical psychologist. And the interest in culture was mostly captured in the work that I was doing around eating disorders and risk factors for eating disorders, where we were seeing very different rates of eating disorders depending on the society, the culture, high income, low income, gender, and so on. And then I had the opportunity to go, I had a Fulbright faculty award to extend some research that we were doing in the US to Japan. And so
Wow.
we went to Japan, and I wound up with my family. We went for 3 years and stayed for almost 12. So there, my studies in psychology really became global, and the marriage of international studies and psychology began. And when I returned then to Columbia University, is when I had the opportunity to begin this work in global mental health at Columbia that I got involved in eating disorders, but then more broadly working with the World Health Organization and ICD-11, and ultimately our program was designated a WHO collaborating center. And
Wow.
here we are. Yeah.
That's amazing, Kathy. So 12 years in Japan.
12 years in Japan.
And a Fulbright award. That's a difficult award to receive. It
was quite an honor. It was really an honor. And so I guess one, as you remark on Japan, and as we think about people who may be listening at different stages of career, when I had the opportunity to go to Japan professionally, I had multiple grants at Columbia. We had just finished renovating a house. I had twin babies. There were all kinds of reasons not to go to Japan. So one of the things that I would say about careers, and one of the things that I feel fortunate about with my career, is that there have been opportunities that really were unexpected that I was able to take advantage of. And so I'd encourage people to think about what are the doors that might be, on the side of their journey. If their journey is linear, there are doors on the side, and they could take some turns along the way, and actually it will greatly enrich whatever work they decide to do. And in the world that we live in today, it's so global that the idea of living elsewhere for some window of time is really feasible. Yeah. You and I are having a conversation, thousands of miles apart.
That's amazing, really, this connection. And and I didn't know that you were had your master's in international affairs, so that explains a lot.
That's right.
How you capture every time we meet, what is going on in Brazil. So it's amazing, and how our story, our personal history produces the results in our life. It's amazing.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I saw your TEDx talk in Japan.
Yes.
That was amazing about suicide prevention. How was that?
So the opportunity, I was invited to give a TEDx talk in Japan, and it was actually, again, that was a first for me, because I had not given a TED talk before, and it's a very different preparation compared to an academic talk, and it really required me as a scientist to think carefully about what was really important and how do I tell a very complicated story to a community of individuals who are interested and very intelligent, but not specialists. And so telling the story, and I think this is a really, really important skill for all academics, to learn how to translate the work that we're doing into language and terms and meaning for people who are not specialists. So as I think about, and I think that's often a skill that's not taught, but a really critical one, because we, within the world of mental health, I think we have fallen down on that job a bit. And I think we're getting much better professionally. And I think globally there's growing awareness of the significance of mental health and its centrality to global health. But we could be even better at telling that story,
Sure.
both what the challenges are and what our successes are, and how we can promote mental health as much as talk about the problems.
You know, your TEDx talk is an inspiration to me. So I'm
Thank
talking a
you.
lot about suicide prevention, and
Thank
I will always watch again your video to get some inspiration. And do you think that this is a skill that can be developed? This skill of communicating better with the general public?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's first of all, within the academic community, I think growing awareness about the need to connect to other scientists in other fields and other professionals, that awareness is growing. The solutions today require multiple areas of expertise. So if we really want to address suicide, we need to have educators involved. We need to have psychologists involved, psychiatrists. We need to have maybe exercise physiologists. Our kids aren't exercising. What does that mean in terms of mental health and suicide risk? We need to have writers involved who can tell the story. And we need to have policymakers, right? Once we realize that we really need a variety of individuals who can contribute to these wicked problems, we learn how to talk about the issues differently.
Okay.
And so I think it's absolutely a teachable skill, and there are, and I think it is hard for academics because we hold on to our expertise, right? But really, your expertise will grow when you give it away. So just keep sharing it because it will grow. You will not lose your capacity to contribute by sharing your expertise, just the opposite.
Sure. And this is one of the things I admire in you, is that you communicate very well with people, with the general public, with people with interest, with some interest in mental health, but not really that invested. And I try to learn. But how was it for you? How did you develop this ability? That you said that you realized that you had to do that in that TEDx talk. How did you do it? What was your?
So there was a moment when I was living in Japan. It was evident to me, I was involved in a number of initiatives around Southeast Asia, promoting and advancing education for kids in general, and especially girls. This was a time where, in terms of global health and education, there was a huge push in promoting education as a way of for economic development, for health and mental health. Well, actually for health. But when I went to one of the schools that I was involved in, and I spoke to the director of the school, and I asked what they were doing for the kids in terms of mental health, she whispered. She was an American who was a co-director of the school along with a local co-director. And the American said, "Shh, we don't talk about mental health. It's really stigmatized here." And so I said, well, these kids have been through a lot, and I'm sure there are mental health issues. And so what are you doing? She said, there's just too many other issues. And so the local co-director of the school waited until the class program was over. And she said, could you come with me? And she took me down these winding dirt roads to outside the city, to a what would be a rundown garden shed in suburban Brazil or suburban America. And there was a lock on the outside of the shed, and she opened the lock, and inside was her older male relative, her uncle, who was psychotic. Mm-hmm. And she said, we need to talk about it now. Even here, we need to talk about it now.
Wow.
And it really brought home for me the arrogance of people coming from high income countries thinking that we know what needs to happen first, second, and third in other countries, and particularly in low income countries. And it really was what put me on this course of thinking that we need to begin to have many more open conversations around mental health with all kinds of people so that we break the silence. And so that was really the beginning of my thinking that I can't only talk to other mental health professionals. I need to be talking to everyone and anyone who will listen and who will engage around mental health.
Wow, what an amazing story. Yeah. And we have this, we don't see that often, but in the suburbs of big cities in Brazil, like São Paulo, sometimes we have the information, oh, I saw a psychotic patient never treated that was locked in the one room of the house, a small house in the slums. So it's a terrible situation. And
yeah. And the truth is, almost always that happens because the family doesn't have any other option, and they're basically trying to keep someone safe.
Exactly.
And it is not malintent. It is not, sometimes it's driven by shame, but it's almost always driven by a lack of knowledge and a lack of access to treatment.
Exactly. Here in São Paulo, for instance, our public mental health services, they have the capacity to support less than 30% of the population, 20% of the population. Right. So it's difficult to blame the family when they have no other option.
That's right. And they need to go out to work.
Yeah.
They need to, carry on in order to take care of this family member and others.
Sure. Wow. And so you realized that you needed to communicate with several, whoever wanted to listen.
Right.
And one of the things that we trained during the time I was a global mental health scholar is to communicate with possible donors, possible people who would finance programs and projects. And actually, this is a very important skill for me now, because our public funding is almost zero, and we are looking after this alternative source of funding. And this is a work that you have done for many, many years to inspire possible donors to invest in mental health. But it's hard. How have you been doing in that? What's the secret to be successful?
So, a couple of thoughts about that. First is, we know by the data that exist, as imperfect as they are good enough to tell us that 1 in 4 people across a lifetime will have a significant mental health problem. Mm-hmm. 1 in 4 means that in the average family, at least one person is going to be directly impacted. And that means the entire family is impacted, right? Because if you have a loved one who has a mental health condition that requires treatment, that's going to have an impact on you and your family, right? So essentially the first point is around mental health, everybody knows someone, everyone knows someone who's had some real mental health condition that needed attention. So to start by creating space where people can talk about that, because there's, unlike other health conditions, there's still a lot of silence around mental health conditions. So when people aren't doing well, they are prone to thinking that there's something, they have a lack of will, or it's a bad attitude, and there's a lot of self-loathing and self-denigration that goes on. Mm-hmm. But once you begin to talk about it and people have a chance to hear other people's personal stories, empathy increases and shame decreases. And then you have space where you can build trust and talk about these very real health conditions that we all are familiar with. So I think that's the first step. Then the second step is that people want to do good in the world. People want to have an impact in the world. And there are many people whose lives have been significantly impacted by mental illness, and then have been significantly benefited from getting the right care, getting the right treatments, and learning about mental health and mental illness. And I find people want to do something to ensure that other people who have similar conditions get the help they need, or have access. But they don't have the expertise. So they have a certain resource that they can bring. Maybe it's their network of communications. Maybe they have a television show. Maybe they have financial resources. But they have some resources that they want to put toward this problem. And you at your center, or we at Columbia, we have our expertise, our resources of knowledge about what the risks are, what the treatments are that work, that we can bring to the problem. Mm-hmm. And so I really think of it as a partnership. I think that the way that we can be successful in bringing resources to mental health is to not really think about it as fundraising, but thinking about it as, how do we build partnerships with all the different kinds of people who we need to be focused on this problem. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it that way, then you build relationships with people who have different resources that they can bring, and people give to people. Wow. Right? That's amazing. That's how I think about it. And, for example, Elson, let's think about it this way. You were in touch with me about the program that you are hosting here. It's unlikely that I would have said yes if I didn't know you and know your department and have the trust that we've built. And I know the excellent work that you do. I'm happy to have this conversation with you, right? Because we have built that foundation. And it's the same. And so we can do more because we have that experience. And I think that's true when we're talking about building other partnerships, including financial resources being brought to a program.
Wow, that's great, Kathy. It's a lesson. Yeah. It's a beautiful way to see it. And it's perfect. It's a partnership. It's a partnership to make a change, to impact real world.
Yeah. And there's one more thing about that, which is, I think as academics, we are trained to be highly critical, and to research is very incremental about what do we not know, and we learn a little bit more, and we learn a little bit more. And within the academic community, we spend a lot of energy with a very critical lens on what we don't know and what research has to figure out, which is a real problem-solving kind of focus. It's really important. But if you want to build partnerships, the other part that is as important is you also need to have a vision, and you need to share solutions.
Mm-hmm.
People don't give money to problems. People give money to solutions. So maybe one time someone will give money to something because otherwise it will disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But that's usually a one-time kind of gift. Partnerships are about seeing something that you can build together and having a vision and having a path that requires investment. And so I think that's another really important thing about engaging the public and broadly is there are a lot of things we know how to do in mental health. And in fact, if we just had enough resources to deliver the treatments that we know work today, it would transform the lives of millions and millions and millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, having the capacity to talk about in a positive way what we can build together, what we can do together is really important and really critical.
Yeah, that's another way of seeing sharing a vision.
Exactly.
Instead of sharing the questions, the doubts that you have, it's okay to have it. We are researchers. We need to.
And you have to have them, right? To have the gravitas, to have the real excellence. But right, sharing a vision.
Do you think our projects, the projects that scientists and academics they develop, they lack this vision to be motivating to the general public?
Mm-hmm. So I would say some of the scientists that I admire, that I especially admire, work hard to make sure that they are thinking about bringing science to real world concerns. And one of the ways that I would encourage every young academic to spend some time working with a policymaker. Spend some time talking to your policymakers about the issues that they are grappling with in terms of legislation and laws and funding.
Mm-hmm.
Your research will be forever changed, because when you start to hear and understand in the larger world what information is needed in order to solve some of the problems that we all care about, it changes how you do research, and it changes how you ask the question. It changes the priorities that get set. So I think that's a really, really important opportunity, is to make sure that you're talking as a researcher, that you're talking to policymakers or talking to program folks, people who run programs in communities. What do they need to know to provide better services? Or what do policymakers need to know in order to change some legislation or in order to allocate funding? And it will really change the way you think about the questions that you ask.
Wow, we think we know a lot, but we have to learn from them. What aspects of our questions will be more relevant?
That's right.
So, Kathy, and then you in the Global Mental Health Center, the Center for Global Mental Health, for years you have been receiving international students as scholars from all over the world. How did you came up with this idea? It's amazing. I was benefited from it.
So yes, we were really delighted, Elson, to have you as a global mental health scholar, and you are among a cohort or a community of scholars from around the globe. So you also, I think, should feel very proud of that community. I think you all represent the leaders of the future of mental health in your respective communities and globally. And our commitment was precisely that in the world we live in today, the opportunities to learn from each other and to build global networks around big issues in mental health would be significantly advanced by supporting the rising leaders in mental health and in psychology and psychiatry, nursing. And so this program was launched now, I have to go back and see, a number of years ago, but we have had about 18 global mental health scholars in our program, and it is just thrilling to see what people are doing and how the global mental health scholars are continuing to connect with each other and really emerge as the next generation of leaders.
Well, congratulations, Professor. This is amazing work. And what are your main interests nowadays? What have you been focused on?
Yeah. So one of the areas that I've been doing a lot of work has been on improving mental health in the workplace and attention to mental health in the workplace. Again, along the same lines of what I had described before, that I feel that significant advances in mental health are moving forward, are moved forward or advance by engaging other communities. And so in the workplace, there are significant issues around mental health and mental illness that impact work productivity. Mental illness is the leading cause of absenteeism at work, leading cause of presenteeism at work, leading cause of disability in many places. And it is a place where people spend a lot of time. And so to the extent that workplaces can support employee mental health and also make organizational decisions, build a corporate culture that supports mental health so that we prevent certain mental health conditions or certain mental illnesses, that will be good for and have huge impact. And we know that we do not have sufficient resources for everyone who has a mental health condition that needs that's causing distress and impairment to see an individual therapist. So to the extent that we can move mental health good practice into our other organizations like workplaces and schools, we can greatly expand capacity. So the model that we are working with a number of different companies around how to measure mental health and mental health of employees, because in the workplace, like in our research, we do what we measure, right? So we need to measure what matters. So how do we measure appropriate programs and services and employee mental health? And then how do we put appropriate programs in place? And one of the frameworks that we use to talk about this in the workplace is how do we help workplace leaders and managers in the workplace protect employee mental health, promote employee mental health, and provide access to appropriate care. So those 3 Ps, protect, promote, and provide access. And so just recently, actually in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, I worked closely with AXA Asia to develop a toolkit supporting employee mental health during COVID-19 and beyond. And that toolkit is online, freely accessible, and provides an overview for leaders and managers in thinking about how they can build a stronger culture that is informed by best practices related to mental health in the workplace.
Wow. Where is this toolkit available, Kathy?
So if you you can just Google, and I can send you the link.
Okay. I'll tag it in the video.
Terrific. Yeah.
Maybe we can translate that here.
That would be fantastic. Fantastic. It's openly accessible. We want to encourage, as many people to use it as possible. If that's something that would be of interest to you, I would be happy to talk further with you about it.
For sure, for sure. So, and how the companies have been receiving this idea to deal with mental health? Do you think that the pandemic has brought more attention to the mental health problems?
For sure, for sure. So, companies, global corporations, national corporations, more local companies are understanding the significant issues that mental health in workplace engagement, productivity. Companies are increasingly recognizing the younger professionals are more openly talking about mental health issues as a priority, and mental health and positive mental health as an important piece of how they consider where they want to work. So mental health as a recruitment and a retention factor is very important. And increasingly within the workplace, leaders and managers are recognizing from their own personal experience and from the increased conversation that it's a significant issue and a significant opportunity. Because when companies pay attention to mental health and really build a culture that is in the interest of their employees' mental health, it has many, many benefits that accrue to the individual and to the company.
Well, that's amazing. And relating to the pandemic, you said earlier that you are in some initiatives assessing the mental health consequences of the pandemic. How is that?
So, along with a number of colleagues in our global network, and under the leadership of Dr. Jeffrey Reed and Dr. Carrie Cogan, who is in Canada, Dr. Tehilia Rebello, who is another colleague at Columbia, I am collaborating on an online study that surveys mental health professionals to understand what the impact of COVID-19 has been on their practice and what the impact has been on their own experience of their own practice delivery and stress and mental health. So we're collecting data now, and we have several waves of data collection, and it's a global data collection. You mentioned that we work together around the ICD-11 revision. And in doing that work, we developed in the service as part of our collaborating center, we served as the hub for all of the data coordination and building out the global clinical practice network. And I would encourage you, and I know you're a member already, but others who are listening to join the Global Clinical Practice Network, which is a network now of over 15,000 clinicians from 150 plus countries.
Wow.
Who have contributed to global studies, first related to ICD-11 and now related to COVID-19. So we can ask and examine some really interesting questions given this global network. So we're just beginning to look at that and look at how the pandemic has impacted clinical practice in different countries that are at different stages of making their way through this pandemic. So we'll have more information at another time. I'll have to come back to talk to you at that point, but clearly issues around stress are huge. Issues around adapting treatment and the transition to telehealth, what that means, the need for training in telehealth, because lots of clinicians have never delivered clinical care that way, are all emerging as important topics to study further.
That's amazing, Kathy. So we are heading to the end of our interview. I just wanted to check with you, what are your next steps? What do you think are the great challenges ahead?
Mm-hmm. So I think that this is our moment in a certain way. It's a moment in history where we have been able to communicate more effectively as the mental health community, professional community, around the priorities in mental health. And I am very much encouraged by the younger generation of mental health professionals and those who are pursuing a whole variety of careers, the interest in mental health and the recognition of mental health. So I am very encouraged by the possibility of really making great headway going forward. I think that one of the challenges that we have as a field is that we need to be very strategic about making sure that we are moving forward and focusing our resources on issues that really matter and solutions that really work. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, in the workplace, there are billions of dollars are being spent on workplace mental health around the world. We have to make sure that those resources are being spent on programs that really work, because otherwise, one of my biggest concerns is that we have captured the attention of leaders in the workplace. We've captured the attention of teachers and educators. We've captured the attention of parents, and they are saying, okay, we're ready to talk about mental health. We're ready to do things. We're ready to provide appropriate programs and treatments. We need to deliver as a profession. Wow. Because otherwise we'll lose credibility and we'll lose ground. So I think that's our challenge and our opportunity, is to really push hard on getting mental health out there, collecting data to know, are we having an impact, and where do we need to improve what we're doing and continue to iterate so that we become a learning organization as we go.
I loved it, Kathy. It's our moment as a mental health community. I loved it. So to finish our interview, Kathy, this conversation is directed to our young generation of researchers, students, medical students, psychology students, social services students. What would you say to them so that they can dream of having a career as brilliant as yours?
Very kind. So I would say they want to build their career. They want to I encourage them to pursue their passions and to bring in non-mental health friends, colleagues, to really gather information from people they respect, architects, ask the engineers, where does mental health fit into the work that they do? And have those conversations that are at the interstices, right? At this space in between, because that's where the future, the creative ideas are going to emerge. And not to be afraid, there will always be naysayers. There were people who told me that I was, they couldn't understand how I could possibly go to Japan at the moment that I did. But in fact, it laid the course for this very meaningful and joyful journey for me. So I encourage people to dare a little bit and to imagine and to have those conversations with people they know and respect, and exciting things will come.
Wow, Kathy, thank you so much. Brilliant thoughts. I loved it.
Thank you.
I'll get in touch to get the link for the toolkit.
Terrific.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.